Hi, my name is Jack Kellogg, and today I will be talking about the history, threats, and management of Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska. Welcome to Kenai Fjords National Park, one of Alaska's 8 national parks. Kenai Fjords is made up of almost 700,000 square acres of land on the Kenai Peninsula, west of the town of Seward. The park is home to the Harding Ice Field, over 30 glaciers, and numerous fjords that were carved out by glaciers over thousands of years. The park is also home to many different types of wildlife, such as both brown and black bears, moose, sea otters, harbor seals, orcas, and humpback whales. The park welcomes over 300,000 visitors a year and is a very popular tourist destination. The story of Kenai Fjords National Park starts around 23,000 years ago when ice carved out the fjords that make up the southern coast of western Alaska. Fast forward a few thousand years from the creation of the fjords, and you will find the Alutiiq people. The Alutiiq are native Alaskans who have lived and subsided in and around the south central Alaskan coast for over 7,000 years. Due to archaeology and studies, scientists have found evidence of Alutiiq settlements on the Kenai Peninsula that existed between 900 and 1900. In the early and mid 1900s, people used the Kenai Peninsula as a place to hunt, fish, explore, and look for gold. During the 1970s, a push was made to make the area into a conservation site by President Richard Nixon. Nixon wanted to establish a national park in the area due to the high density of wildlife and the natural beauty of the glaciers and fjords. But due to Watergate, Nixon wasn't able to finish what he started. But in 1978, President Jimmy Carter made the area into a national monument. In 1980, Jimmy Carter signed the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, which established 157 million acres of land as protected areas around Alaska, including establishing Kenai Fjords as a national park. At the time of establishment, very few permanent inhabitants existed on the land, and no evictions took place. For the most part, the land was just wilderness, outside of a few mines here and there. Despite no native inhabitants existing on the land, the National Park Service and the BLM had difficulties claiming the land due to native claims. But under the Antiquities Act, Carter was able to overrule this claim and establish the land as a national monument. There were protests across Alaska. People claimed that they felt no one in an office all the way in Washington, D.C. should have say over the land in Alaska. There was even a protest of over 100 people in the Kenai area at the office of the National Moose Reserve. Despite these efforts, the national park was established and remains a national park to this day. The park is categorized by the IUCN as a Category 2 area. This means that it is a national park. National parks are of similar sizes to wilderness areas and aim to protect functioning ecosystems. National parks aim to facilitate visitor experiences and education and are often big benefiters of the surrounding economies. National parks attract millions of visitors and are the areas we as humans interact with. There are many direct threats to Kenai Fjords National Park, including mining pollution, glacial melt, and on-site ocean pollution. Ocean pollution, including noise pollution, pollution from vessels, trash, and toxins in the water, are all causing a decrease in marine life populations, most notably the northern resident killer whale. Another direct threat is pollution from mines in the area. There are many abandoned mines that still exist in Kenai National Park as evidence of the mining done in the early 1900s. Minerals and materials that were left behind finding their way into creeks and rivers, negatively impacting salmon populations. The most impactful direct threat, though, is glacial melt. The Harding ice field and surrounding glaciers are all melting, hurting Kenai fjords in multiple different ways. In certain areas, the ice is melting up to 12 feet a year, which is an insane rate. The primary driver behind glacial melt and many of the park's challenges is climate change, which is an important direct threat to the park. Rising temperatures in the region, particularly during the summer, are causing glaciers to recede. Climate change itself is fueled by several underlying factors, including the increase in human population, a high reliance on high emissions, transportation methods, and global deforestation. The runoff of these glaciers and the decrease in ice landscape are leading to a variety of different impacts, such as erosion, a rise in sea level, higher potential for glacial lake outburst floods, habitat destruction, and landslides. History has played a big role on climate change. Over the last 100 years, technological advancements and human population growth have increased greatly, which directly lead to climate change and global warming. We as humans play a major part in the melting of ice caps, glaciers around the world, and this is all due to our rapid advancement over the past century. Kenai Fjords knows that their park relies on glaciers, and with climate change at an all-time high, they are at risk. The wildlife, plant life, and ocean all depend on the glaciers in the area, so it's important that they do what they can to slow the melt. One of the planning tools they've used to better understand the problem is through a monitoring and research program called the Nearshore Ecosystem Response to Degradation Study, or NERD for short. This study analyzes how the size and position of the glaciers impacts the environment around them. The study breaks the test into 3 different groups: fjords with tidewater glaciers, fjords with glaciers that don't touch the ocean, and fjords with little to no glacier input. The collection of this data is vital to understanding how glacier size and position impacts the surrounding areas. Another planning tool they are using is an education and interpretation program. This program helps educate staff and visitors on how they can lessen their environmental and climate impact, both when they are within and outside the park. A third planning tool they use is the Climate Action Plan, which has a goal of decreasing waste and energy use emissions by 50% and transportation emissions by 40%. They approach this goal by using sustainable energy sources, decreasing power usage, using greener transportation methods, and implementing a new waste management procedure. Through the use of these 3 planning tools, Kenai is successfully decreasing their emissions and is able to spread valuable knowledge to their 300,000 plus visitors a year. They were able to better understand the impact of melting glaciers on their ecosystem using the NERD study, found data information that we did not know before. Kenai Fjords is using a number of management principles to address threats. The first of these is science-based decision-making. They're using science and in-house studies, such as the NERD study, to better understand what they can be doing to minimize their impact on their environment, and they're acting accordingly. Kenai Fjords is also employing an accountability and transparency-based principle in order to share with the public their exact impact on the climate and the land. They're using the trust of the public to share in the responsibility of treating the climate well and holding themselves accountable. They share their emissions and climate impact data with the public and are fully transparent in their operations. A third management principle they use is resilience and climate adaptation. This principle drives the park to minimize their climate impact and use sustainable practices across the board, like sustainable energy use. Thank you for listening. Today we talked about the history, the threats, and the management principles used by Kenai Fjords National Park in South Central Alaska. On this page, you can find my references. Pause the page if you'd like to look at in depth at any of them. And thank you for listening.